Welcome to the Freedom Conversation podcast. I have with me today Monica Perez, and I'm very happy to speak with her a second time. She's a veteran podcast and radio host and from the USA, and she's my go-to when things are going on in the United States, and things have been going on to say the least. So welcome back, and how are you, Monica?
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I really enjoyed our first conversation. You were pretty new as a podcaster at that time, if I recall correctly, and I was just so impressed at how valuable I found talking to you to be. Sometimes, people come out of the gate, it's not as focused, but it was really great. So I'm very happy to be back, and I'm doing well. I continue to struggle with this balance where I feel like I'm personally fine, my family's fine, and my heart breaks for people I don't even know, which I've never really been great at, at the psyops and shootings and stuff. I can't shed tears. Maybe the Syria thing is just too close to home for me because my grandmother was an orphan who was from Damascus originally. I don't know what it is, but my, heart really breaks for those people. But for myself, I'm fine.
Yeah, I share everything you say on my end too. I'm happy, healthy, and focused. But yeah, there's things going on, and I have seen that you were reporting a little bit on Syria and feeling a little frustrated. And I definitely sympathize for sure. I haven't been watching it closely, but I remember when it all began back in the days of yore, the Arab Spring and all that. I did watch very closely, and I'd absolutely sympathize with what you're going through, but I'm a little bit detached from it myself. The war in the Middle East, I'm like, God, I just can't.
There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, there's
That's part of
absolutely
it.
nothing you do. And anything, when I look at, uh, I appreciate people speaking out about what's happening to those in Gaza. I did notice, though, before that, more people had been killed in Syria, and those protests weren't given oxygen. So I wonder what's in store for us. I can't help but feel like the pro-Palestinian protests, while genuine and valid and justified, I mean, that this is all kind of going to be a Vietnam type thing where we're going to have massive domestic protests here because now they have the Democrats out so they can have the so there was a problem with the pro-Palestinian protests butting up against a Democrat administration and Democrat university heads and stuff. Now everything's Republican, the legislature, the Supreme Court, the executive. You can really have domestic strife, and I just feel like that in itself is a goal. And then the backlash against that. So one thing I heard this morning on the radio was massive concerns for anti-Islamic hate, anti-Muslim, anti-Arab hate. And that on Fox News, they said it's very similar to anti-Semitic, which I would say it's actually anti-Semitic because they're Semites too. But it's similar to anti-Jewish sentiment. And when I hear that, I'm thinking we are going to have big legislation that seriously curtails all of our First Amendment rights. People think of the First Amendment as freedom of speech. It's assembly, it's petition, it's religion, it's everything. And so I feel like it's a setup, and that makes me feel frustrated. So, I mean, then I start getting to where the answers have to be kind of meta, have to be God, then I think, well, why is God, I don't know. It's hope. And then you get back to the personal, like, what is my relationship with God? How much do I really believe that it's a personal God who really, cares, and that there's, hope for us in the afterlife, our only hope, perhaps, like then. So instead, I try to flip through my old Christmas cocktail recipes and start thinking about the next week or two and taking a mental break from all of that.
Okay, well, you certainly set us up here for the show today because we are going to be doing a crossover between a lot of big topics. Everything from the Catholic Church's new anime mascot with the Ukraine colors On her to well, let's see, what do I have on my old list here to get us started? Is it first of all, I was going to ask you, is it too early to be Merry Christmasing? It's December, it's Friday the 13th, people.
I
Just
know. I have a priest
December.
friend, listener friend, who says he doesn't start Christmas until Christmas. That the 12 days of Christmas are Christmas to Little Christmas. So I'm
Right.
using that as a justification for why my Christmas cards are going to be incredibly late this year. Do not be insulted.
Yeah,
I always want to give up on you probably don't even, Canadians probably don't even do Christmas cards. Do you?
yeah, there's a lot of card stuff going on. It depends on if you're a boomer or not.
Boomers do the cards, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
pretty much. Yeah.
I'm like that the tail end of boomers. So in New
Okay,
York,
yeah,
they had
yeah.
stopped doing cards by the time I came around. So like the cool kids don't do cards. But then I moved to Texas and my husband's like, "Of course you're going to do cards." So now I do cards and anyway, I've got to get to those. But Christmas, you can st I like to start it literally the day after Thanksgiving. But that's because I make fantastic Douglas fir cocktails and all of that. So
Yes.
you can't limit that to 2 weeks a year.
Yeah, I was snooping around on your website and I saw a link to another website you have about drinks,
Hmm.
cocktails.
Yep.
Yeah, it's cool. Okay.
Really that's for me. That's just so I have my recipes when I'm out of town.
There you go. Oh, yeah, there you
It's
go.
Monica,
Yeah.
monicamixes.com.
MonicaMixes.com. Yeah, there's some
Yeah.
good ones there. Yeah.
There's some
There's one
Christmases.
that made me laugh, something about the United Nations. And it was like
Oh yeah, the blue helmet.
the blue.
It's actually delicious, by the
Okay.
way, but
Okay.
it's like coconut and stuff, but it's blue and you put a big giant round ice cube in it and it represents the global takeover of the
Uh,
UN. You're gonna need a cocktail
you're
for
gonna need a
that.
cocktail for this administration or whatever. Yeah, okay. Well, I've been watching your show lately because there's been so much going on in the States. And whenever there's something going on in the States, as I've said, usually my go-to, because you see through the psyops pretty quick, and I appreciate that because I don't have the time. I got my own psyops here in Canada. I got to
Yeah.
manage and big ones. And you're right about what you said about it is anti-Islamic sentiment and anti-Jewish sentiment being in the media all the time. Here they're saying they're both a problem, and they're just stirring this propaganda is
Yeah,
out of
they
control.
are both
Actually,
a problem. But
they are a
I
problem. Yes,
remember,
yes.
I've been doing this for, now a long time. I started in 2011, 2012. I had a weekly show on the radio. And at that time, no, first of all, it was like before really podcasts or anything. Throughout this entire time, you could never say stuff like that. People would freak out if you said even well, I was on a neoconservative radio, so and I remember back in I read like the Oded Yinon plan, which talks about I don't know if people have ever it's like the Wesley Clark 7 countries in 5 years. Same thing, but it was from the 80s and it was written in Israel. And I mean, the firestorm I created by doing, and I was totally innocent. I was like, wow, look at this, this is what's coming. And people lost their minds on both sides. So uh, I saw that it was absolutely anathema to speak about any of those things for the longest time. And then all of a sudden, it's anathema if you don't.
Yeah, they're weaponizing a lot of these very
Right. Agreed.
historical and very deep emotional historical. It's very complicated, first
Yes.
of all. So that's why a little bit of hands
Yes.
off with the
Yes.
podcast here. I focus on
It,
transhumanism. I think we can all understand. Yeah,
yes.
that's a problem.
Yes, it's personal, right? It's personal. And because it's identity based, and I think, the identity stuff obviously weaponized, but I have absolutely no idea what it's like to walk in somebody else's shoes, to be raised in, I know what it's like to be, you know, slightly greenish brown person growing up in an Irish neighborhood in New York and Democrats and my parents were kind of traditional conservatives. Like I know what my experience is like. I also don't get hung up on the fact that I have this unique experience and I need to indulge every emotion. But I have always tread very lightly when it comes to identity stuff because I don't want to offend people and say something stupid out of ignorance,
Yeah, yeah,
but they
yeah.
kind
Oh, I
of
feel
lead you
you.
to.
Yeah, yeah. I feel that. I feel that. Yeah. I mean, I have my own opinions, of course, I guess, about geopolitics, but at this point, I'm beginning to just not believe a lot of things are even happening out there, but I can't prove anyway. That's a whole other issue.
Yep.
1984. reality.
Baudrillard, is that the philosopher says nothing is real?
Yeah, Jean
That's a nice
Baudrillard.
thing to think. I like to think that sometimes.
Yeah, James Corbett was on a couple weeks ago, and we did talk about Jean Baudrillard and the Matrix and all that stuff.
Interesting. I'll
That
have to
was
go back and listen to that one.
Yeah, that was a good one. So, but with regarding your show and stuff, so besides, you're doing the news, deep dives, interviews, and that sort of stuff, you've been reading this book, and there's been 11 parts thus far. Maybe you're finished. Mass
Yeah,
Control. It's
I just finished it.
Mass Control: Engineering Human
Yeah.
Consciousness by Jim Keith. I'm going to ask you about that later,
Okay.
but I guess I'm just going to lead us to this question here. Tell us a little about your maybe even your education. You went to Harvard or something,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
your
yes.
radio,
Yes.
media background, and what topics do you like to cover on MonicaPerezShow.com?
Thank you for asking that because I uh on the one hand I have a lot of like when I was on the radio, instead of people thinking I was a kook, I had some legitimacy because of my education. And now in the podcast world, it's having a good education or having not a good education, but having elite credentials is a uh like a detraction, like people can be sus. So my story is I was the youngest of nine. I grew up in New York in a lower middle class family. And my father was from the very beginning very nonconformist, didn't like authority, but he fought in World War II because as the youngest, I have pretty old parents. And he saw what happened. Like when he got back, he has a book, Backdoor to War, which was about the State Department memos about the Pearl Harbor being really a lie hop kind of thing, let it happen on purpose. So he had his eyes open from the beginning. He was led down the garden path by like William F. Buckley, who ended up being a CIA agent. You can think of all that stuff, but he always loved Ron Paul. I hope that's, not a continuum. I still have hope in Ron Paul, but so and my father hated higher education. So and he thought women should not waste their time doing that because it would be wrong of them to work while having children. It's a full-time job. And so he kind of encouraged me to not take that seriously. And I really was highly influenced by him. So ultimately, it's an even longer story than making it. I won't put any more details in there, but I dropped out of high school, even though I was like top of the class, kind of, always did well, good at standardized tests. I dropped out of high school. I moved away from home. And my mother like did not like that. And I said, well, I'll give it a year. And if I don't, if I'm not wildly successful by the end of a year, I'll come back and we can figure something out. She's like, okay. So she encouraged me to come back to go to community college. I said, look, college is a waste of time and money. So if I can, I mean, I guess Harvard wouldn't be a waste of money, a waste of time and money, or Yale just for the jobs you could get. So she said there's a community college program where people have transferred, one or two people. And it's like, okay. They said they would work with me to do it. And after I did this 2 years program, they got me into Harvard and Yale on full scholarship. So I picked Harvard and I graduated from there in only 2 years, which was like super aggressive. I was like pathologically miserable, shaking. I had anxiety attacks. At some point in my life, my hair fell out. Like I was not set up for the big time. But anyway, somehow I stumbled into a job. Like I figured out pretty quickly that in order to, drag myself out of poverty, I would need a good job. So I got a job in a bank. And just again, because I did so well in standardized tests and I knew the next level was to go to business school, I at one point I applied to business school and law school, and I ended up getting into both at Stanford. So I went there. And then I was an investment banker, and then there was a crash. And right after the crash, I decided to have babies, and I had my first child had Down syndrome. So that was kind of the end of my career, but I was bored. So I started like taking tests to be a CFA, to like be a financial advisor, which I passed the test, takes years. And so I have this crazy credential I never used. But my mind was on fire. And during that time, I just fell into the Hans Hermann Hoppe rabbit hole. And I was like, oh my gosh, just like they used to ask the question, is the existence, you know, the a question of the existence of God was kind of unthinkable in the Middle Ages, they say. Like that wasn't something that you would toss around at the dinner table. The question of the necessity of government is something that we, until at that time, I never heard anybody ask that question. And I thought, oh my gosh, society, and I was a waitress. So I knew society was self-ordering because I made $2 an hour, which was all taken by taxes. And there was no requirement to pay tips. But I mean, in the thousands of people I waited on, maybe 5 people didn't give me a tip. You couldn't, you couldn't arrest them or anything. You would just say it out loud and they would be embarrassed in front of their friends. So
Yeah.
that was it. It was just social pressure. And I thought, wow, society is self-ordering. Like the idea of arm's length transactions are so much more beneficial than crime that it's the majority of the people are going to do that. And they're going to band together and defend themselves. And they're going to do that voluntarily and legitimately. And I just went down that anarcho-capitalist rabbit hole and was at a wedding sitting next to like the only other English speaker there. And she was a radio producer. And I told her, can you believe it? Like government's not even really necessary. Let's think about that. And I talked to her like I'm doing to you right now, just nonstop for 10 minutes straight. And she said, could you talk to a wall? And I said, meet my husband. And she put me on
Yeah.
the radio. I was on the radio ever after that. And I was totally racked with not screen fright, stage fright the entire time. So when I lost my show in February 2020, so I have to assume it was because I outed COVID for being 2 years and not 2 weeks, although it could have been other things. I really wasn't, I was fine with it because I mean, after 8.5 years, I was still nervous before every show, like sick to my stomach. But podcasts I like because people don't have, they're not listening for the news, traffic, and weather. They don't
Mhm.
feel like they own the station. I'm not, they're picking. But on the other hand, you don't get the reach and you don't get the conversation calls from people who have a different viewpoint, which was invaluable, which I'm sure is why they don't have that anymore on the radio at all.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got an interesting background, and that's one of the reasons I like to listen to you because I know you've got that good brain for a reason. I mean, that lawyer brain. So,
Yeah, analytical. Yes, that
and
makes
yeah,
me
you're high.
different from
Yeah,
the
yeah,
journalist type.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I like
Oh,
to do that. Yeah. I like to listen to that and I like to focus on the Bill of Rights. People think I'm a conspiranoid because I know there's something going on behind the scenes, but I'm not. I don't spend a lot of time on interdimensional stuff, woo-woo stuff,
me neither.
UFOs.
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
don't.
No, no, me neither. Now, if I'm going to do one show about Sasquatch and Bigfoot and UFOs, I would like to do it all in one show. Get it all in there and talk about it, and yeah, have it done with. But I saw a cryptid in my own neighborhood, so I'm going to have to address it at some point because now I'm a believer. Because anyway, that's we can't sidetrack into my local
I
cryptid.
want to hear that though. You have to tell me just one
Oh,
sentence
okay,
or
sure,
one
sure. Well,
paragraph.
I'll tell you this. It's a pack. That's the first thing you need to know. It's a pack, and they look like aquatic dogs, sort of like seal skin, but with the body of a dog. And my wife was in the car, and we had to stop the car because they were crossing the road. And I'm on a very rural road with lakes everywhere, with a very huge lake right where this happened. And that's where the cryptids would live, isn't it? In the big, deep lakes. And I was looking at my wife saying, what is that? And I know all the animals in Nova Scotia. We don't have those, whatever that is. And my research actually led me to in Ireland, where a lot of our culture actually comes from. There's a giant otter. So we have the Nova Scotia giant otter or otter man. I don't know which yet. I'm on the case anyway.
Wow, interesting. All right, I'll keep my eyes open for that one.
There's the full story. Yeah. Anyway, it's weird though. It's weird. Um, but back to my questions I have prepared for you. Let's do some quick takes and get this out of the way. Donald Trump, what's going on down there? In my mind, he was the great divider, and now he's the deep state president. Give me a quick take on Donald Trump, and then we can move on to RFK for another quick one.
Yes, I agree that Donald Trump is the deep state pick. I feel like they have set him up with a cult of personality. Like I said, the one thing I like to really talk about, the one thing that bridged the gap for me that everyone could agree on, like you say transhumanism is bad, and I say the Bill of Rights is good. And we can, even if you're an anarcho-capitalist, you're not doing better than that. you're probably, and if you had anarchy, you'd probably end up with world government at this point, is it's probably set up. So I am a huge fan of the Bill of Rights, and Donald Trump never talked about that, whereas Ron Paul always did. So I knew that he was swapping out that zeitgeist. That was his first round. And now that's a total cult of personality. He's got the persecution thing going. They made sure that that championing him and resisting any criticism of him was a feature of his followers, not analytics, not any of that. And for me, the biggest, the I guess domestically and foreign, he's got a big job to do. You could see with COVID that Hillary Clinton never could have overseen that. I mean, there would have been 4 million long guns on the lawn and the mall in DC if she had been the one perpetuating an emergency order that gave the governors all license to completely eliminate our rights. So he did that. He got away with it. And he increased our debt by like $40 trillion, which was, not 40%, which would have been, I don't know, $8 trillion, something like that. I can't remember the trillions, but it's a lot. It's many trillions. And that they needed to do that to get us out of the ZIRP, the zero interest rate in perpetuity, which I think started basically in 2001. There was a debt collapse. And then again in 2008, they just couldn't get out of it, and they had to hyperinflate, which we're feeling now. They act like that was Biden, but that was Trump, I think, making that right. So he did a lot of stuff that you can see plays into the hands. But now I think that the two big things are these foreign wars, whether it's a real world war, it feels like it's being maneuvered to look a certain way. I personally still think we're talking about a new Iron Curtain. That I used to be an investment banker and did high yield bonds. So there were a couple of industries I did, small niche industries where there was an oligopoly or a duopoly, two people. And what they would do, they never had to talk to each other, but they would never engage in a price war or hit each other head on. They knew they would just set the prices high. And when one customer goes to one side or the other, it'd be like the same. And I feel like nobody feels like they can achieve global hegemony right now. The UK, the US, they cannot physically dominate Russia and China. So I feel like Syria is an example. Like I think Russia negotiated to withdraw from Syria in order to get Ukraine. And I feel like they're just negotiating, and it may come with war, it may not, to have like a duopoly, a dual hegemony, and really to split the markets up. And I think the AI chips are a great example of that. There's real competition there. The US is locking down. They're like, China, you are not selling your chips here. You're not getting our chip. You're like the Taiwanese chips are the good ones. You're not getting them. We're going to separate this. Now, absolutely leveling the Middle East and making it something else. A friend of mine said, yeah, it's like Vietnam. They're just going to, or Korea is really, he said Vietnam, but Korea is really what they did. They leveled it to the point where MacArthur shed tears. MacArthur was
North
ashamed.
Korea, you mean, right?
North Korea. Well, I don't
both?
know, when I don't know who was leveled in the Korean War, but I just remember there's a famous quote by MacArthur saying, when I came upon this scene, I had never seen that level of devastation ever.
Yeah, there was a lot of war in South Korea, but just as an add on to what you were saying there, they had a lot of bombs on board their ships and loaded on their planes when the war ended, and they said just go drop them all in North Korea, and they pounded the North Korean to dust too. That's why North Korea has a real chip on their shoulder. So people don't realize that there's a complex history, not even that complex, but regarding North Korea's bad attitude on the world stage. Anyway.
Sorry, I had somebody coming in the door. I'm telling them I'm not. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
add on there, I guess. You were
sorry,
just saying.
Yes. So I believe that, but I also found I was in South Korea. I was stuck in the airport for a day, so I caught a glimpse of it. And Carter. Sorry. I hope we can tolerate a little dog barking. Is this new dog has to be with me in this room?
Yeah, I didn't even hear the dog bark. Actually, I think your
mic. You didn't?
I think your mic suppresses it or something. Yeah.
My mic's the best. Okay, great. Okay, so good. Then I'll feel free to talk. So the one thing I noticed about Seoul, and I also noticed it when I was in Frankfurt, is everything was kind of built at once. So if you go to Frankfurt, most of the buildings are 50s buildings. If you go to Cologne,
Hmm.
a lot of there was definitely back there, but Frankfurt was leveled. And I always think it's a sign of having been leveled in a war. All the buildings, there's no building that predates that day. So I can't help but feel like South Korea probably had its fair share of bombs too. But I feel like they level these places not only to control them, but also to uh in a sick, totally mercenary or mercantilist kind of way. They've built the whole world is built. Like I look at that. You go to England. I have a friend who lives in a building that's been around for hundreds of years. It's just a brick building. He lives in it with his family. They redid the inside. If you just built all the buildings, if you didn't tear them down, there should be enough buildings for everyone to kind of live in. And yes, you should pay, people should own them. But you build, there would only be the buildings for new, for population growth. And that's just not enough to feed a machine that's bigger than ever. Like Halliburton is bigger than ever. You've got to fly. I think we underestimate how much of this stuff is truly simply to feed this machine. And yeah, so I think that we'll probably have the wars. It'll probably be for that reason. Um, I think they're sifting out the geopolitics between Russia and China. The Chinese president is coming to the inauguration of Donald Trump. I mean,
I've heard that he's
you know,
invited, right? Is he confirmed?
yeah,
Is Xi coming to town
I
for
don't know
this?
if I assume he's
Well, the
coming
left
to,
should be happy about that. That will satisfy the
yeah.
left, wouldn't it?
And the CDC of China was sitting shoulder to shoulder with the CDC of the US and Advent 201, which was the October 2019 kind of script for COVID. So obviously they cooperate on a certain level. And then domestically, I feel like we'll have this unrest that will usher in the surveillance state, censorship, all of that. But also, the people that Trump is making his bed with, Vance and Teal and Musk, and the way they talk about how they want to redo government, including the Secret Service, they want to take out the middle. They want to take out the bureaucracy, which would be great if they were doing that in the service of the Bill of Rights, the Ninth and 10th Amendments, which push that stuff down to the states. Like the federal government was way overreached. It has only 18 mandated powers. The things that it does is wrong. So when Kash Patel, who's going to take over the FBI, says, I don't want 7,000 FBI agents sitting in DC. I want them fanning out around the country fighting crime. The Constitution has this treason and counterfeiting are the only crimes in the Constitution, the only crimes. And the FBI is totally unconstitutional. They created the Department of Justice to enforce laws on the South even after the Civil War. There's no enforcement mechanism for congressional law in the Constitution. And these guys are, so what they're doing is they're pushing the power up, then they're controlling it. And I feel they're planning to usher in quite the technocracy. I do feel like that's what Trump is up to.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. Let's do RFK. What's the deal? Is he going to fix the food? Is he going to fix the drugs? Is he going to take big pharma to task?
Nope, I don't think that he is going to be able to do any of that. I assume he's going to get confirmed. Um, I don't think they're going to go that far, but he's there to
Not
uh,
confirmed. Okay. Yeah.
well, I think they can't even do the confirmation until Trump takes office. So this
Yeah.
whole naming the cabinet members ahead of time is unusual. Like this,
It's
Trump got
oppish. It's oppish, isn't it?
yeah, way way ahead of the game. And RFK has a very big climate change background that we would not like. And if if he wants to save the earth, save the people, save the food, save your bloodstream, whatever, saving the climate, and I've always hated chemtrails, absolutely hate them, but I think what you're going to see is shutting down. I've expected this for a long time, like international air travel, making it just impossible to afford, and that will disconnect us from each other. Then we'll only be able to connect via screen, which is highly curated.
Yeah, I'm with you on the technology shift for sure, for sure, for sure. And it feels so insidious, like it's creeping in from all the corners and all the angles in a weird socially acceptable fashion almost. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of tendrils there.
Yeah, well, because Trump's making it. He's making it okay. He's giving it its imprimatur.
Yeah, we're gonna get into Musk, so we'll be back in this milieu very soon. But I want let's talk about this insurance CEO assassination. Have you been looking at that at all? Because I have some
I,
thoughts.
yeah, so I looked at the first pass. It's funny because my husband told me about it. He's like, "Oh my gosh, did you hear about this?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then like 5 seconds later, it's like, "Yeah, either it was the jealous husband of someone he's having an affair with, in which case I'll buy it. But if it's got any kind of policy implication, this is fake." And my husband's like, "You're cold." And I'm like, "I'm not cold. I'm just telling you." He doesn't
Mm,
want to hear it.
mm.
So as soon as they said it was his wife said on that day it was about some claims issue, I'm like, I mean, I've been in a unexpected death situation. Like you aren't formulating thoughts like that. Like it took me 3 days to remember my own address after my son was born with Down syndrome. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like I'm not saying it's not real, and I don't think she said much, and I'm not saying he didn't die, but then I immediately started looking at the agenda items, and some of them were a silencer, a ghost gun. I think now they're saying there's some 3D gun there.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's, we want the powers that be really want single payer health care. That's going to be a big element there. They brought in, I didn't see this coming, Ted Kaczynski. So
yeah.
this
The
guy's
guy was
discrediting.
commenting on social media on something about Ted Kaczynski. Yeah, I've heard some of that. The
Yeah.
media also is running with this in a very interesting fashion.
Well, right, because they're using it so nobody talks about Syria, which was very unpopular, back in the day.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah. Man, that Syria situation,
Yeah.
the Donald Trump is attempted assassination. The media talks about it for a day and it's over. Now Syria taken over by, I don't even know who. That's how undetached I am from it.
The people who did
One day in the
9/11,
news, it's over.
our allies who did 9/11, like Sunni, even the official narrative is Sunni Arabs, which
Okay.
is the worst thing you could do to Syria. You'd think it was bad under an Alawite
Hmm.
who allowed
Right.
diversity. You should read
Right.
their 2012 constitution. You ain't getting that no more. So it's Sunnis, Israel, and Turkey. Like, way to go. And Blinken's like, well, we have to keep bombing them because ISIS. And it's like, well, we are ISIS. So,
Yeah, they're just using that poor country
yeah,
as one of their battlegrounds. Like
it's
Ukraine, I think, is
wrong.
being used, and
Yeah.
Palestine and other places in the Middle East. I think are
Yeah.
all just these. But I'm wondering where Asia is going to choose for their
Well,
battle. For World War III, we needed a new theater right over
I
there.
read an interesting comment, which is if we are truly, if the empire is totally engaged in Syria and the Middle East, that gives China more leeway, more, elbow room to solidify its, its the
Region.
parameters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was an interesting way to go. I mean, and this also supports my kind of gut feeling that it's going to be back to a, not a bipolar world, but a biopoly or whatever, biarchy, and
Multipolar world order.
not multi. See, that's people
Mhm.
say it's multi, but I don't think it's multi.
You're
I
thinking
think it's
dual,
the
two
yeah,
only.
it's the
Yeah.
Atlantic Empire and the Pacific Empire.
Hmm.
I think that's
Sure.
where it's
Yeah.
going to be.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. New. Yeah. Okay. Well, on that topic, I was watching Dr. Drew yesterday, and he was talking about this with Matthias Desmet and Aaron Kirti. So we know Desmet, everybody knows and loves him, even though some people have questioned some of his theories, but I don't really. I think mass formation psychosis is something. But this other guy wrote a book called The Madness, or no, what did he call it? What was his book? New Abnormal, the rise of the biomedical security state. So these two guys were on with Dr. Drew, and they talked about this assassination, if that's what you call it, killing. Um, and they brought in
Right.
a psychological stuff, you know, and it got very deep. And I sort of have a lot that I was jotting down as this was happening because I was thinking about talking to you, and I thought this is kind of playing into some, and this is going to be a transition for us too as we go through some of this stuff here. But
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Desmond was saying that with modernity and rational, we talked about the rationalists, me and you, I think last time briefly. but with rational knowledge supplanting the religious, the mysterious, nature of our societies and stuff. That in the family and community building, these things were affected through thinking that the scientific revolution was the greatest thing, and forgetting about spiritual values. So they started to go very deeply, and I was like, where are these guys going? Talking about this gunning down in the street of this CEO guy there. So then they start building their narrative into, the results of modernity, which some are good, some are bad. The atomization of the individual, the isolation, frustration, aggression, lack of unity and empathy, lack of ethical awareness. So this is Des Smith's ground as a psychologist looking at the COVID and other things. We know this, but they got into this stuff about the increase in technology, also, and social media being like a blight on society almost now. And this free floating anxiety and the ripeness of mass formation psychosis. So they start to go through all of these things. They're pulling all these threads, and then they tie it all back into this news story because there's a lot of people who actually are feeling this is a cathartic moment. People on the left and people on the right, apparently. And in the mainstream news, I even looked myself this morning. There are many articles, even here in Canada, saying, "Oh, catharsis," because the left hate the capitalists, so they see this guy as some sort of capitalist bad guy, and then the right could say, "Oh, pharma bad, gun him down, good." So I don't know. So very fascinating, right? And I'm no psychologist. It's hard for me to regurgitate all of this complex information. Do you have any thoughts at this point? Because I have a little more.
Are you saying that the catharsis is the actual assassination?
I'm saying that the media is running with this story that
Right.
the people,
Yeah.
especially on social media, are saying things like, "Oh, I really that killer, that guy, I really appreciate him,"
Yeah.
or
No, there's
whatever.
definitely that was right away. And when you say stuff like that on social media, I remember a year or two ago, a couple of people were proud of the fact that they got taken off of Twitter. And I was like, yeah, that's a badge of honor. But did you say something super aggressive against somebody, or was it a political thing? So I get taken down from me. I never really say anything aggressive about anybody. Um, like people, I use vulgarity, but I don't never curse or swear. Like I
Mhm.
wouldn't wish ill on somebody or, take lightly that which is divine. So I don't actually do any of the super offensive stuff, but I use vulgarity a lot. But if
Mhm.
people were aggressive like that, I found that's when they got taken down. So, and even mildly so, even mildly so, like eat a bag of dicks or whatever. I knew somebody who got taken down for saying that. Well, I find that a disgusting expression. I don't like the
Yeah,
imagery
yeah,
at all.
yeah.
But sorry, you can bleep it. I'm sorry, I should have warned you.
No, I
Very
said even
nasty.
worse. I've said worse
Okay.
words that I would like
Okay.
to bleep, but I haven't yet. So
Okay,
don't
sorry,
worry.
but that's you have to use I felt like I had to use an example, but so for them to start openly condoning murder is a distinct, a decision that's made by the social media. So yes, there's something to that. And yeah, I forgot to mention one of the agenda items is biosecurity, but there is also a politicians and now CEOs are in danger. So they should be in their ivory towers. And we should, again, it's the First Amendment. We should have no access to them, no accountability, no transparency whatsoever, which is also what is being called for in the various areas of the Trump administration.
Yeah, yeah. Man, I really butchered my explanation there, but do you see how complex some of this stuff? You're a bit of an expert in propaganda deconstruction, but there's something so freaking deep here. They're really tapping in now to the deepest, deepest, most layers of people's minds with this stuff. That's very bizarre. So they bring in Christianity. So we're going to start.
Yes.
I'm trying to sort of segue us, and it's a complex segue, but it's happening because when they use the word catharsis to describe the situation,
Interesting.
I looked up the definition, and things get even more deep the further you look at this, because Matthias Desmet's contention is that religion is almost dead, technology has come, and we are so atomized now, even beyond anything. It's almost like our resonance with people is deteriorating every day. That's his exact quote. I even have it written here. That one of the consequences of our technology is that our resonance is decreasing, our empathy and communication skills. You see it in the kids, the communication skills, eye contact, all that. But so they continue their deconstruction of modern society by saying that by using the word catharsis in the headlines, and I could screen share and show you even the headlines where this word is used, catharsis, that they zero in on this as taking the pulse of the Western culture right now. And they're like, you shouldn't be applauding murder, first of all.
Right. Agreed.
Okay. And the media is projecting this. Social media influencers are projecting, and they're like, poor Matthias Desmond is just like, it's like, I'm done. I'm done. And so it's kind of funny. So this lack of ethical principles and a catharsis for the listener is I guess sort of an emotional release from a lot of pent up frustration. So the poor COVID people who lost their jobs, like my poor wife and people I know, we were victims of big pharma, and now like someone shot one of them dead, and oh yeah, you're gonna clap. No, I'm not gonna do that. And the people on the left, like we say, oh, he's an evil anti-capitalist and he's been shot dead. Well, he deserves that because people can't get insurance in the United States, and yada yada. But there's
You know
something
what it
so
is.
profound here. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Girardian.
Say
Are you
again.
familiar with Rene Girard? It's a philosopher. He actually wasn't a philosopher, I think, by training, but he's I've been aware of him ever since I think Vance became VP. And I forget if Vance was the one who talked about it, but if you dig into Rene Girard, he says quite profoundly, I think, he talks about the scapegoat, the importance of the scapegoat. And before I ever even heard of Girard, I knew that some people think that the scapegoat is the most powerful archetype in human history. And the way it works is you have to find someone everyone hates. Everyone agrees this person is hated. You kill him, and that makes society right again. And then I think in the Old Testament, it has a scapegoat is actually like a goat. There's like the sin offering, and I forget exactly how it works, but you're supposed to put all your sins into this animal and then slaughter it. And I feel like that's what
Uh-oh.
Jesus represents also.
Yeah, they brought that
And
up.
yeah. Oh, really? And that's so I hadn't thought about this being the scapegoat, but it is a classic. And the fact that it's regarding healthcare, which COVID is the thing that needs a scapegoat. COVID was a terrible wrong. It was like the COVID policy psyop thing was such a societal cataclysm. Like it was an abomination that our elites upon whom we bestowed our authority would betray us like that, kill us, remain in power. We accepted it. Like there are so many things wrong if you want to get deep like that. And to have a catharsis like this, in the health industry, yes, I would say it would be Girardian for sure.
That's yeah, that's creepy. That scapegoat concept that they're doing some black magic to try to almost cover their tracks as they go with.
Yes, they would be doing it. I wondered if it would be Fauci along the way. They would be doing it. And actually, there's a document from 2017, the SPARS document on the Johns Hopkins website where it's 25 like media messages. It's chapter after chapter. And it just talks about the scripting of COVID to the point where this was written in 2017, to the point where it says like if the US president supports a medical countermeasure and then had a name for it, I would say hydroxychloroquine, then everyone on his party or hers in this example would be for it, and everybody in the other party would be against it. I mean, they just scenarioed out all of that stuff. And in one of them, and one of the end chapters, Aftermath or something, it says, we have to decide people step down, and I read scapegoat, and we have to decide whether we need to apologize or just brush it under the rug. Like, how are we going to approach this? So now you see articles coming out. The Congress just did a thing like COVID was a lab leak and it was covered up and blah blah blah. You know, that's a cover up, of course, in itself, but it's scripted well in advance. And this is where I say people like, oh, you think everything's planned. I'm saying everything's scenarioed out. I'm saying many are called, but few are chosen. I'm saying some things work and some things don't work. I think Hillary and Ted Cruz and Trump all came to the, 2016 or whatever it was together, and the powers that be would have accepted any of them. Ted Cruz would have been the Christian thing with like all of them had potential legitimacy issues. Cruz was Canadian, whatever. I could go on, but yes, this stuff is scenarioed out in advance. And one of the things that COVID did need was a scapegoat. And I would say catharsis is the exact right word for it.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a fun little psychological rabbit hole for us to
Yeah.
play around there. So we're gonna segue now. I got a few things, and I'm keeping my eye on the time here.
We have a little, I mean, I'll do what you want.
How
We have
are
a
we
little
doing for
extra time
time?
since we
Like
start
yeah, we started early. What are we looking at? Like 20 minutes, do you think, or
20
more?
minutes in or 20 minutes left.
20 minutes left.
Oh, I have plenty of time. We started early. So
Yeah,
I
I
have
didn't
an
actually
hour.
catch what time oh wow, okay. Well, as long as we have at least 30 minutes, like we can definitely break into some of this other stuff.
Yeah, I can
Uh
tell you when we started if you want.
oh, okay, sure.
Okay. So because when I start, I always
Yeah, I probably have it somewhere too. It's fine.
yeah, okay.
As long as I know that we got at least 30 minutes, we can get into like some of the.
Yeah, we have 30 minutes for sure.
Okay, so this is we'll try to get through this kind of quick, but you've been reading this book, as I said, Mass Control: Engineering Human Consciousness by
Yeah.
Jim Keith. And I was just going to ask you, what are a couple of the takeaways because I'm fascinated by technology dominating the human species utterly and totally. So, what came out of that book for you?
Yeah, it was amazing to me. I mean, the very last chapter to me was like stunning because this guy died in 1999. I would say, basically, could be questionable circumstances. He was an absolute OG when it comes to conspiracy research. He had newsletters, books. And in the very last chapter, he talks about what he expects to see from the internet, and it was uncanny how he said they would roll it out, lock you in with a lot of freedom, a lot of information, a lot of good, and then slowly take it away, use it for surveillance and censorship and control. It's really, you have to listen or read it for yourself. It's my last episode. But along the way, so in the beginning, he talks about all the documented evidence of, or I should say, he talks about something that's fully documented where the early days of psychological research on human beings in this country. He names names, people's names, Jolly West, Ewan Cameron, Ian Copeland, like a lot of people you've heard of in positions of authority conducting totally unethical scientific experiments on human beings. And then talks about some of the things they came up with because this stuff they were keeping notes and records. And then in the 70s, I think there were a lot of commissions. There's the Church Commission. There's the Committee on Assassinations. There was a lot of stuff. Operation Mockingbird was revealed, which was the control of the press. So in the 70s, supposedly this stuff was vetted, aired. We had the Privacy Act, like a lot of good stuff happened or looked like it was happening. But really what happened, I think we all know, is it got pushed down and they stopped making documents. They stopped revealing. You're never going to find it. That was 50 years ago. So his documentation stops 50 years ago, and it's still more than we are aware of. They were able to impart directly into your brain feelings of anxiety, thoughts, very much like the Navy Yard shooter described. That's if people want to, I might still have articles on my website. My website got trashed a few times, so I don't know if it's still there, but it talks about this guy. It's mind control. And mind control without any devices was already pretty well established. But then after that, he talks more about survivors, firsthand accounts with some evidence, some consistencies. That's the only resource he has, like towards the end of the book, about more modern day stuff or more today stuff. But the way he anticipates what's going to happen is still a lesson for us today. Like people still don't, what he predicted and we can see happening is people still don't understand it. I saw it because I'm not a boomer, I'm a Gen Xer, but I saw the internet rope me and my generation in, then get totally tightened up so that my kids don't even remember what it was like. And they think that my conspiracy theories are like kooky. I'm like, it used to be there. Even the Wayback Machine is scrubbed. So yesterday I found something that was not, it was scrubbed from the Wayback Machine, but I had saved it in Get Pocket, and it was still in there, about the 2012 Defense Intelligence Agency desire with descriptions of the kind of Islamic state they would like to see emerge on the border between Syria and Iraq in order to destabilize the Syrian regime. And, that's getting wiped. But so I'm there. My kids can't see what Jim Keith predicted and is actually, it's already happened.
Yeah, because you and I have that ability to have, not ability, but we were there, as you say.
Benefit. Yeah.
Benefit. Yeah. Yeah, I'm 46, so I'm right there too. I think the internet came into my house probably a junior high.
Yeah. You remember it. Yeah. You
Yeah, yeah.
remember
I remember the good old
that
days,
big.
climbing trees, knocking on doors. Hello. I'm not texting. I'm on my way. I'm
Yeah.
outside. I'm about to knock on the door now. Texting.
Yes. I remember before that. And it's just amazing what I hate to never think about the good things, but I'm navigationally impaired. So I used to get lost all the time. Now I'm dependent on
Yeah.
maps and stuff on the phone. I'm absolutely dependent on it, which is probably not actually better. But
Well,
there's
we're
so
cyborgs
much.
anyway.
Yeah.
We're cyborg now. We're
Yeah.
cyborg.
That's the thing. So here's the many are called, few are chosen. They tried to give us ARFIDs. They tried to get it in our arms, and we wouldn't have it. This thing never, ever leaves my side. I mean, never.
Yeah.
I have it with me all the time. Who needs an RFID? They figured it out, and they're gonna have real ID. Whereas my son who has Down syndrome, I took his phone away because it was getting him into trouble. You
Mm.
can't screen it. So I took it away, and he's starting to ask for it back, but it was great. Like it just freed his mind. Now he can look at you in the eye and talk to you and whatever. So it's a net bad, I think, but it did have some good things, which is how it got into that's how we all got addicted to it. It was the good stuff.
Yeah, technology is really coming along with this meta modernism kick that's been happening in the philosophy world, which is new to me. I've been looking at that a lot. But man, we're really on an arc or a downward trajectory of so many things that were good. Technology and science, for example.
Yes,
They,
yes, absolutely.
yeah, downward
Um,
trajectory.
things are getting worse. It's shocking. So when we moved, I finally bought a house in California. The house is almost 100 years old, and it's clearly much, much better quality
Yeah.
than anything that you could find around here
Yeah.
that's, built in the past several decades for sure.
Yeah, that's part of the fall of the West, isn't it? The competency crisis. Here's another thing that came out of that book, because I did listen to some of it also. Your reading of that book. And I thought that I covered all the angles on transhumanism that I could find, but the psychedelic drugs and mysticism combined with some of this technological voodoo was a really terrifying thing that guy was bringing up in that book. Anyway,
Yes.
that was just one thing I wanted to just point out that stuck in my mind. Sounds creepy,
Yes.
whatever the hell was going on that day in the office.
I just did a really fun show with the guys. I think he's never even done a podcast before, but he has threads on Twitter, Stephen Ridley. And we were going through his slides, and he would do a slide, and then the next slide would be a map with another point on it, and then a map with another point on it, like every slide. And the map in the end was a like 3 by 5 block radius in San Francisco that had the birthplace of, it was the Haight Ashbury Clinic for Charles Manson and Jolly West. It was headquarters for the Black Panthers. I mean, there were like 10 different things that were the seminal institutions
Mhm.
for that that change and how we're thinking about things. And
Postmodernism.
yeah, those guys were connected to the process church. And that's where you get that Sons of Sam, the Satanism,
Mhm.
spread around. It definitely includes the UK and New York, then and just in the reading I'd already done. And a lot of it started there. Scientology, the space program was started by a Satanist and out here. But there's a connection between we were talking about RFK. Sirhan was from Pasadena is what I'm talking about in Southern California, but they were connected to that process church and everything in San Francisco. So the occultism with the drugs and the mind control, yes, they can all be connected.
Yeah, creepy. And one other thing that popped out of the book, which I found very fascinating, is this essential need that the controllers realized about meaning and the mysteries, miracles to replace the religious part of our brain. And they realize it's in like bread and circuses and meaning. That you were reading that in chapter 11 or something. And we don't need to necessarily pull that apart right now, but
I
do you
agree.
remember that part?
Yeah, I don't necessarily remember the passage, but I
Yeah.
know that I
The concept is fascinating, eh?
realized that the Soviet Union, maybe I drew this connection, they tried to eradicate religion and they couldn't. Actually, the Russian church now, which I'm sure there's deeper reasons for this, but the Russian Orthodox Church is stronger here in the US than I mean, it's probably the fastest growing Christian sect. I mean, among the people I know or
Yeah.
the people I interact with. And so I feel like it was clear to the mind controllers through various experimentation that you cannot control people without religion. They will use it against you if you don't. And I have this great quote from Irving Kristol, who was the father of neoconservatism. I believe his book that I'm talking about is called The Autobiography of Neoconservatism. And he said, if we don't bring the right into the religious into the right in the US, we'll lose them. They will be against us. So we've got to fold them in, which is when we started folding them in the 80s, which is when that was from. So they knew that. So now I see they want this world religion. Some people tie it into Sandy Hook. I don't know if it's Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, which is like a syncretism. They bring it all together. I just drove past a place called the Pasadena International House of Worship. So it's like a IHOP, Pasadena or I how.
Not
And
pancakes, God. Yeah, yeah,
right. And I
yeah.
looked in, I don't think it's even God.
Uh,
I don't know. Oh, prayer, house of prayer, not
house.
worship,
Okay.
not worship, prayer. So, which is totally different. And I looked and I thought that's like 1984 had like the confession booths, like the book didn't it have the confessionals? There's some kind of, they always have that, or maybe it was a different book, Brave New World or something. But they always have, you have to have that place. And it was so generic. It was in a strip mall. And I just looked at the window and I thought, I've got to look into that. I don't want to slander them if and my guess is they're probably extremely well meaning and the people there are probably looking for something. But I wouldn't be surprised to find the wizard behind the curtain in the back.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm just looking at my AI Jesus in Switzerland
Oh,
story.
yes.
Have you seen that, by the way? That went
Yes,
around.
yes,
Yeah.
I tweeted it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to. Well, I probably don't need to even
Of
share the
of
screen
all
because it's.
places, of all places, Switzerland, which is, I have to assume, totally godless.
Well, they've had the MAID program or the euthanasia of yourself program. They've had that for a long time. That country, because when Canada adopted it, I
Yeah.
was just looking around other countries and in
Okay,
Switzerland.
so
Anyway, yeah.
I be please hold that thought. I just don't want to slander these people. It does say that they worship and they aim to minister to Jesus through music, prayer, and the arts. So it is not godless. It just
Yeah.
looks that way.
Okay.
Um, but kudos to them for uh loving Jesus. So
Yeah,
Anyway, go
there's a
ahead.
lot of offshoots of different religions and sects, I guess is the word. Hey?
I mean, as a Catholic, I'm supposed to think that everybody needs to be Catholic, but I mean, if the Pope isn't Catholic, I'm just not sure I can I can die on that hill.
Okay, let's get
But
into it then. We'll skip over
yeah,
the Elon Musk stuff, but we'll come back to him if we have
sure.
time. So, okay, Catholicism, the Vatican. So, okay, I will share the screen. We got to share the screen
Yeah,
for
what
this
about
one.
the AI Jesus?
Sorry,
We're not going to can
almost.
we
Okay, we're good. Yeah, let's. Okay, we'll do
let's say the AI Jesus real quick or at some
the.
point. Don't lose that.
Yeah. Okay. Should I share the screen? Is there? There's no
Yeah,
need to
sure.
really. Is it? Okay. I'll see if I can.
Well, actually it's just a stock image if I recall correctly. It
Yeah. Yeah. I'll
doesn't
show
show
the.
anything because it's AI.
Okay. I'll share the screen for the
Yeah,
Lucy
share it.
mascot. But let's just talk
Yes,
about the
there you go.
Jesus AI for a second.
Sure.
Let's talk about this. Okay. So here's the story. In Switzerland, they decided to put up a confessional booth for the Catholics. I don't know if it's in a church or not. I think it might be. And it's an AI image of Jesus, I guess, through the graded screen, of the confessional booth. And I saw that, and it got so many thoughts going in my head that I just bookmarked it immediately, and I constantly go. It passes by my feed when I'm looking to do a podcast. I'm like, someday I want to talk about this. And I thought, let's talk about it with Monica because you say that you're a Catholic, so I thought, well, maybe she would have a thought on this. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I assume that's training the Project Bluebeam or whatever. Isn't the idea that someday second coming of Jesus is going to be a hologram?
Yeah, the
Uh,
singularity stuff.
yeah, just
Yeah,
projected into the sky. I mean, I'm not talking about the truth or Catholicism. I'm saying that's the conspiranoid idea.
yeah,
But AI to me right now, the AI, what we're thinking of as AI, we're just training it.
yeah,
That's why we have it right now. That's why we're interacting with it right now. So my guess is, and it's these searches. So when they want to get a profile of a person, they don't, what's much more valuable than a psychological profile than your Facebook page is your search history.
yeah,
So it's these other ways they tap into you. So if they want to get a full profile of the mentality of spirituality for what you were talking about, which is how to control people with religion, this would be a great way to round out the AI, the religious fraud, and maybe the Antichrist himself, because the Antichrist seems like Christ, seems like the Christ. From what I understand, the Antichrist will fool you. And it's got to be. And I remember to ask my dad, like, how would we know? How would we know? And he said, I don't know. And then later I thought, oh, well, discernment. We have discernment. You'll know them by their deeds, but they could get pretty good at the deception.
yeah. Oh man, the psychological manipulation of people, and especially if it's been going on for a long time. Like we're intergenerational now, and if we could
Right.
just look at the Rockefellers and the big pharma and the all there's so many things that started about 100 years ago to engineer people. It's really sad, because now we're really seeing things are taking a bit of a turn.
That's a great point because I always talk about the intergenerational nature of world power. They teach their kids something else, but you're pointing out the intergenerational nature of the subject
Mhm,
of being the subject of that power, of
mhm.
being the masses, the plebs, or I always complain about losing heirloom wisdom when it comes to gun safety, preserving food, and a big thing is the ethics, the morality
Yeah,
that you point out is lacking. And I
that's huge,
know,
huge.
yeah, I know that that's an intergenerational problem in that I always make this point, whether I'm right historically or not, I think I am, that the Epicureans, the first generation, I think it was the Epicureans, the first generation, they kind of did away with the God myth or whatever, and they wanted to satisfy themselves, but they were great. They were moral, they were polite, whatever. But the second generation that was not raised with the myth were animals, like hedonistic animals of, disruptive and just selfish to the point of like not being able to function. So it died off. But that pointed out to me the intergenerational necessity of some of this heirloom knowledge. And you're right, like the morals, the wisdom would be lost, and the boomers are the we would be the weak link.
Yeah, Nietzsche talks a lot about that, the way of the warrior or whatever. Um, Pre-Christianity. Anyway, we can't deviate into this. That's a whole nother sidetrack. Let me see. Let me see. Oh yeah, okay. I'm going to share the screen.
Yeah,
Let's have some fun here.
Luce,
Let's talk about
Luce,
this.
Luce.
Yeah. Okay. Click this
Yeah,
and
like
click this right here. Okay, here we go. Let's start with. Okay, maybe I'll start over here. This is sort of
uh-huh.
the main Lucy face or Twitter page.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I don't know exactly, but Luce, I
Luce.
guess
Oh,
would be,
probably
but
Luce. Yeah, it's Italian, of course, right?
yeah.
So I don't know. This is
Well,
just stuff on
it's
Luce.
Lucifer, right? Luce is wasn't Lucifer, isn't it the same root as Lucifer? So here is she's the I believe she is the mascot for, is it a Jubilee? There's some
Yeah,
event
Jubilee. Yeah,
in,
Jubilee.
or they call it Jubilee in Rome. First of all, what drives me crazy is uh she is Japanese, which is
Hmm.
fine with me, but she's anime. But I
Yeah.
mean, that's a country that is not Catholic at all. And I love Japan, but it's
Look,
just it should probably look at least somewhat
but they,
anything but. Yeah, here's a giant one.
yeah.
She's anime, and her colors are the colors of the Ukrainian flag. She has blue hair
Uh-huh.
and a yellow raincoat and blue hair. I mean, conservative people. I went to Russia
Okay,
once and my
so
brother said, just let me know if there's anybody there with pink effing hair. So because he, and I saw maybe one person the entire time. I assumed she was touring. But yeah, this is kind of Joan of Arcian.
yeah.
She's standing there with a cross, and the knights are basically worshiping it.
Mhm.
I'm not, no, see this also to me to show this girl, which I guess, is Joan of Arc, having people kneel before a human being, even a saint, that's to me, that's wrong.
Goodness.
People will kiss the ring of the Pope because of what he represents,
Mhm.
but there's a problem certainly with the image of Catholicism that it has icons. And that's not cool. And you can't, yeah. She
No,
can't bless anyone. Nobody
mhm.
can, priests can bless. Like even in church, when they say, okay, put your hand up and let's bless like the children. I'm like, I can't do that. I think Catholic teaching is you can only bless your own children unless you're a priest. So this whole thing seems just wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess yeah. Okay, I'm glad that you got some thoughts on this because something definitely stands out as bizarre and strange, especially with these robot motifs. And where's the one for shooting all the machine guns and stuff?
Oh my
Because
gosh. Well, other
real
people might
people,
make them. Yeah,
yeah,
other
real.
people might make them. But plus,
Here we go. This one.
she's, yeah, who's doing that?
Why is this happening? She's at a gun
And
show.
that does seem to be a Japanese girl, right?
Yeah,
Dressed up
this is
as
not a
this
Catholic
Luce.
motif, I don't
No,
think here.
no, right. Yeah. I mean, but maybe they're just
Jesus.
ripping it off, but it makes it's
Ooh.
ripe for that
Okay,
because it's a
we'll stop.
cartoon. It's a pop thing that you can rip off. There's no play. There's absolutely, I mean, the first commandment, I mean, blasphemy is taking lightly that which is divine. Obviously, she's not divine. You can't possibly for a second suggest that, but there's no point. It's like Vatican II. Even if it was done in absolutely the best of faith, taking it lightly is not what religion is for. Like, that's not why people go to religion. It's extremely serious. We're talking about, eternal life or eternal damnation. Like, that's not what people are. Maybe if they're there to feel good, then they're there to feel
I
good.
like
But
what you say there, that religion is serious. And I think
yeah,
that's important to consider. It really is because, or we could just say that, don't worry, guys, the fifth dimension is coming and we're all gonna ascend to the
well, it sounds
the
like that
aliens. I don't
they
know. Come
have
on.
to have that. They have to, if they're going to tap into that, they're going to hijack our spiritual impetus they're going to distort it and of course disconnect it from the gravity of it, that they
Mhm.
have to, because with the gravity of it, you take it seriously, you figure out what it is, you dedicate your life to it, you make sacrifices for it, maybe even sacrifice your life. You've got to dig deep. And that's why I say I struggle with faith, because it's so serious. I have to really think about it. I absolutely I do the works, I follow the rules, I go to church, I really take seriously corporal works of mercy, that kind of thing. But when I finally realized, like, you have to believe, then I had to think, it's hard for me to conceive of God as a person who's listening to me, who I'm interacting. Like, it's scary, and, and it has to be taken seriously. And that girl makes it is a distraction at best.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And I guess I don't want to bash or shit on the new age belief system because I really don't want to do that. Because I think that if a person is becoming better,
I agree. Yeah.
a good person and good to others and good to animals and all that stuff, I'm like, okay, that's a good person right there. That's good enough for me. And also, don't bother me either.
Yeah,
I have that,
but
I have
I
that
think
rule.
it's important. The reason I think it's important to go deeper than that is I'm not sure a belief system of good works and goodwill, which is really, really important, but that's untethered, would have that depth of commitment.
Hmm.
So it could be easily tethered to a false prophet or something, it could be. And or worship. The earth then is worshipped. My mother used to go crazy when the Pope would even just talk about youth unemployment. That's none of his crapping business. I've been a
Hmm.
Catholic longer than he was. I don't need him telling me about that. And she didn't like that. The earth, the climate change, nothing. She's like, we have rules. You're not allowed to waste. You're not allowed to abuse. You're supposed to take care of your animals. It's all already there.
Yeah. No, yeah, I love talking about this sort of thing. And the religion versus spirituality meme war and debate. I do like to get involved in that sometimes. And here's my thing. Sometimes I think spirituality becomes a self-help program where your ego is actually just getting more complex and tangled, where you believe now that you're talking to the aliens and you're constantly upgrading your spiritual resume, like, oh, now I'm taking this weekend course retreat in crystal whatever magic, and then I'm going to study my astrology, and then I'm going to, but all through life this keeps happening and happening and happening. When do you live your real life
That's a good point. And it's a very important point that I
as a
wanted to
happy normal
make.
person? That's what I
Yeah.
mean, happy normal
And it
person.
it could also be Gnosticism. And one thing I'll say, and then I'll answer that question. I have always said, and not everybody likes it, most people don't like it. I actually believe in religion. I'm a religious person more than a spiritual person, because the religion has the rules and everyone can see them. That's why I like
Mm-hmm.
the Bill of Rights. Everyone can see them. You can criticize them. You can compare them. Is my legislator obeying the strictures of, his position? It's clear, it's objective. If you object to it, you can engage in the analytics of it. We've had 2,000 years of that in the Catholic Church, so a lot of it, like every side of an argument has been made, and there's been conclusions and stuff. You can follow it, you can accept it or reject it, but it is crystal clear. And as far as Catholicism works, they have things like spiritual works of mercy, corporal works of mercy, the vices, the virtues. Like, it's very clear. And as my mother said, she stopped worrying about the esoteric questions when she was 19, because she determined it's just a better way to live. It's a better way to live. So I'm on board with that, but I know you have to have faith. So I work on that specifically. But this is what I was going to say about why it's so serious, because and this is where I really struggle. I'm fine sacrificing, acting, whatever, doing things for other people. But my mother used to pray for 4 hours a day. I can't, I can hardly pray for 4 minutes a day. I can't, I feel like if I'm going to spend 4 minutes in pure worship, I need to actually be 100% positive that it's being heard, that I'm, even praying for something to happen, I feel like has uh some value. some fifth dimensional value, even if it doesn't actually go through a personal God. Now I'm getting probably a little bit off the
No,
Catholic dogma, but
and
that's how I
there's
feel.
other religions say that you actually bless yourself. Well, and some you don't really receive blessings. I mean, maybe you can also,
Maybe, yeah.
but when you pray, sometimes you're actually just blessing yourself or teaching yourself self talk. I don't know.
And it works. And I mean, a lot, and that works. But as far as prayer as pure worship, I struggle with it because I feel like there's a non-zero chance this is a waste of time. And I don't have a lot of time. Let's say I have 100 years. That's just not a lot of time. So, as a person who likes to have cocktails and take kids with Down syndrome bowling and make food for my kids, I like to do all those things. And I don't, it's not a waste of time for me to lay around and watch TV with my family because I really, really enjoy it. But to take that time and go worship. So what I'm saying is, yeah, how and when do you live your real life? That's why religion is, I think that's why people struggle with religion because you make sacrifices for it.
People struggle with discipline.
Yes.
This
And
is a
with
dirty
that
word
motive.
in our
Yeah.
culture. Discipline
Yep.
is a dirty word, and you need to have a little bit of discipline. Get up and get in the car, go to church, whatever it is, or
Yeah.
if you're
I
Buddhist,
do that. I do like the
meditate.
rites and rituals, and I think they have value.
No, yeah,
But
of
yeah,
course. Some people
the
need that.
discipline.
Like for me, I almost need religion in my life
Me
to
too.
so I know what to
Yeah, it
do.
keeps your
And I'm
feet on
sorry
the
if
ground. Yeah.
you're psyoped, David, because you're surrendering your free will to a religion. Well, actually, no, I'm smart enough to know that I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you're choosing it with your free
Yeah,
will.
I don't want to
But
reinvent the wheel spiritually. I don't want to go, well, I'm going to take this crystal and worship that
yeah,
planet, and then now everything's good, and then be a mess the next day. No, not working.
but you have to engage in discernment because there are so many falsehoods out there. There is the Antichrist lurking. There's all these fake Catholic converts. Like there's all, or I would say insincere. I know there's that Adrian Vermeule, totally inauthentic. I would have to say I have evidence of that, or at least you can draw the conclusion he's supposedly the head of Catholic, spearheading Catholic integralism, but he co-wrote the Cass Sunstein paper, Inventing Cognitive Infiltration. Like these are things that you have to keep your eyes open. You must be critical. Be critical of the Pope. Be critical of Vigano. Be critical of these things because
Oh yeah,
no one, the authority itself has been hijacked. So
yeah.
all we have are the dogma and the discernment, the doctrine, I should say, rather than dogma, and your own. God had to have given us free will, reason, and the ability to know right from wrong. Those are the three things that you absolutely have to employ constantly. But I do it in the context of religion. And my parents helped me, my parents vetted it before me, their parents vetted it before them. I
Exactly.
have intergenerational wisdom here that so I consider it the one to beat. So I'd have to start from scratch somewhere else, like with your crystals, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah, no. Something that's been tried, tested, and true cannot be. It's a cult. Because a lot of people like to just be very bombastic on social media and say things like all religions are cults. It's like
But they're
this is
not
the most
because
stupidest thing anyone
you
could
have
ever say. It's
discernment
not. Like, how
and
can
free
something
will.
exist for 2,000 years and produce millions of like read Thomas Merton? Like it's like that guy's a Christian, and it's like, how can you say that he's in a cult? He's a totally swell, philosophical, amazing man. He's not in a
Yeah,
fucking cult.
and cults. I would say you could say cult. I'm not sure they're the same root, but a culture, yes, it's a culture.
Mhm.
Is it occulted? No, that's the thing. So that's why I don't like Opus Dei or um, Masonry or Scientology because they have occulted knowledge that you have to earn, and that's a cult.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, indeed. Okay, well, we got into some deep stuff there.
Yeah, sure. Like, yeah, you wanted to not offend anyone. I've clearly offended a
Yeah,
lot of people.
let's
I'm
offend some
sorry.
people. Who cares? It's the
I don't
Christmas
I don't get
season.
offended. So,
Me
if
neither.
people
Me
say
neither.
we need to go defend Israel, you're a Fed. I'm like, I'm not advocating defending the Vatican. You know what I mean? Like I'm not doing that. I mean, you can say what you want about the Jesuits, probably true. you know, Probably true. The Pope drinks baby's blood, I'm guessing. Could be right, could be wrong. You can't get offended because it shuts off your mind. But you can argue
Yeah.
with me. I'm happy to be refuted. Please tell me when I'm wrong. Monica Perez show at gmail.com.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, okay. Well, there's a lot we could get into here, my goodness, but we'll keep track of the time. Another few minutes. Let's
Yeah,
crack
go to the
maybe
top of the hour.
go to okay, yes, so 13 minutes. I think that's enough time to crack open the Elon Musk discussion. Let's go
We
there.
can. People know better than I do. The only thing I remember was that insane tweet where it's like notice odor, what I forget the Latin, like the dawning of the New World Order or something.
Right, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
so I thought it was a joke. Like I didn't think that was really from his account. So he's playing into this is why I start thinking I don't really go into the occult stuff because to me, I'm like 51% think that all of this stuff is being placed in our midst in order to distract us, control us, think that world power is more interested in the spiritual realm when in fact I actually believe it is seriously about physical control, about money. They're flattening the Middle East just to build it up again, just to build it, just to get contracts for Halliburton. I think that that's the plurality, the biggest reason, maybe not 51%, but the biggest reason is pure venality. And I just don't. And so when I see that, I think these guys have us running around in circles on purpose.
Yeah, man, we're gonna see now. And the Syria thing is somehow connected to all of this. I don't know. They want Trump to be clean in so many respects, I think. I don't know. Something's up. I'm so concerned about war, and I don't usually am because they've been threatening this forever, haven't they? I mean, oh, North Korea, World War III,
But yeah,
woo,
I'm
man,
not
it's
worried
been
about North
15 years of
Korea.
this shit. I mean, it's just like I'm tired of it. That's probably why I'm detached from a lot of the
Yeah, we'll get it when
geopolitics.
they want us to have it.
Yeah, when it
It'll be
starts,
colder, it'll be
I'll hear
hot.
about it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
nothing we're going to do about it. And that's the thing. I mean, my heart really bleeds. I mean, I have shed tears for the people who my tax dollars have paid for those bombs. And that's what I worry about. Those people in Syria and Gaza, I worry that there is a St. Peter. And when I try to get through those gates, he says, "Why did you keep going to work? You should." I actually don't, but my husband, you contributed to this. Half of your labor was used to murder people and you knew it. However, they do say that the mark of the beast, if you're they force you in order to work in the marketplace, in order to feed your family, you don't have to sacrifice your life and your family. It's coercion. Try
Yeah.
not to pay the taxes. See what they do to you.
Oh man, yeah. I want. There's so many sidetracks we could go down with the CBDC, and but so I don't know. Mars and the moon.
That
I
was a
mean,
funny thing you sent me. I hadn't heard this one. Tell me.
oh, about the bricks on Mars. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is. I was talking to Karen Hunt, and she had this one in her Substack. So we did discuss it briefly, but I can't get enough of this. So Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. We know this, but there's an issue with building materials because one brick sent to Mars from Earth would be $20 million. So they're like, can't do that.
Got it.
So
And
we got
there's no
to
water.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I could share the screen, but I won't. But there is a scientific study on a legitimate on ScienceDirect.com called Blood. I'll just look at it quickly while I just explain what this is. Basically, they're going to build bricks on Mars. Very smart, but with blood, sweat, and tears from humans.
You know why that's incredibly stupid?
Why? Well, is
What are So what are you saying that you're going to drain the human beings of their blood? Why would you take the whole human being then? Just bring a sack of blood, or better yet, a sack of water. You know what I mean?
well,
You
see,
don't need
even
the
to
human to drive.
yeah, well, even transporting water, right? But
No, I know, I get that, but I'm saying, how are you saying people are going to breed on on Mars? In which
right,
case, where are they getting the water to breed? To filter your water through a human being is not fuel efficient.
yeah. Well,
You understand what
Musk,
I'm saying?
yeah. Well,
You're
here's the kicker,
talking
though.
about a liquid. Where is it coming from? A human being. How did it get there? The
Yeah,
spaceship.
yeah.
Why didn't you just put uh, 5 pints of water? Why bring the bones and the skin and the hair if all you really want is the fluid?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So okay, I got to share it because it's too preposterous to believe that this is a real scientific study, but I'm showing it. And anyway, it goes into
Wait,
protein. What? Can you see it?
yeah, I want to see it. Yeah, keep
Okay,
let
yeah,
me
okay,
make it bigger. Yeah, I want to see what you
okay,
did.
okay. Here you go. So
Okay.
that's the
Blood, sweat, and tears, extraterrestrial regolith biocomposites with in vivo binders. Okay, go.
sounds
Highlights,
smart. So
details.
here's the highlights. There's four highlights there.
A protein from human blood can form a biocomposite material with the moon or Mars dust. The compressive strength of the biocomposite materials is on par with concrete. Incorporating urea from urine can increase the compressive strength by over 300%. We demonstrate that resulting biocomposites can potentially be 3D printed.
Okay.
So
It's
are
like
they saying that you
anyway, it
would
goes on and on. I don't know.
go, okay, so look, all right, so it's showing the Martian environment
Yeah,
has to produce food. The food goes into the human being creates urea,
yeah.
and that makes
Bricks.
bricks. So they're able to grow food, but not make bricks
You make it
on
make sense.
Mars.
Well, you're the Harvard thinker here. You help me
Well,
understand this.
I
I'm the
have found
layman.
the people who went to Harvard, when I first started, like, still talking to people like that, they were less able to stretch their minds than people who didn't go to college at all. And I
Well,
mean
well, the
that not.
kicker is that apparently, and I can't quote Elon Musk, but Karen Hunt quotes him saying that he thinks that he could clone himself 1 million times and then maybe have 1 million clones on Mars. Just thinking you could drain all their
That's
blood.
totally fine. But how are they going to eat and drink?
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So your article says they solved that problem of eating and drinking,
Oh boy. Yeah.
but you get where I'm going. Besides, I don't think we've ever been to Mars, so we have absolutely no idea what's there. There's probably composite material. We don't use biocomposites for, I mean, maybe they do a little bit now, but that's not how we make our bricks. Why the hell would you need to do it there?
So
Fucking
it's
ridiculous.
ridiculous. So that's a bit of fun with science.
Uh,
So, so, how about this one here? We got to make sure we cover this. So we're gonna have to get into this right now. Let me share the screen just for one moment
yeah.
for the final thing that we just. This is the best. You posted this on your social media. Where is it? Right? Is this it? Here we go. From the Onion, and this
Yes.
really, I enjoyed this.
Yes.
Scientists successfully teach gorilla it will die someday. And there's a handy little video. No one can hear it, but
Turn. You could though. Yeah. Make it
if I
undo
unplug
your.
my microphone,
No,
it'll
just
work.
unmute it. See if that works.
Tell me if you can hear this. No, you
Yeah.
can't hear that.
I
You
can hear
can?
it.
Oh,
No, I can't. You're right. Sorry.
let me pause it for a
Thought I
sec
did.
because I just know that the listener won't be able to hear it, even if we
No, you can't
can.
unplug your microphone, but it should go right through.
Tell you what, let me do this because I'm pretty sure this is going to work. Here we go.
And in an historic first, a team of primatologists has succeeded in teaching Quigley, a western lowland gorilla, the concept of mortality and his inevitable doom. Lana Burroughs and Philip Townsend are the researchers leading the project.
When we first started with Quigley, he was just a normal, happy ape, not a care in the world.
So the first thing we did was we taught him patterns like
Right.
red block, blue block, green block over and over. Then it became a pattern of gorilla born, gorilla grow, gorilla die over and over.
Right.
The researchers then showed Quigley photographs of dead, dying gorillas while communicating the phrases use some.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Let me plug in the mic. Okay, so I don't think we need to listen.
No.
It says here Quigley shows clear signs of understanding his existence is meaningless.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a
Yes.
joke, but when there were some comments on that article, a few people fell for it, and I almost
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, it's the Onion.
But
And
it's the
and you
fact.
wrote
Yeah.
something that it's fascinating for this reason because that's just it. In our society today,
Yeah.
maybe this could be true. So let's talk about it.
That's right. And it really does reflect some of the stuff that was in this book, Mass Control from the early days, is that there was never really a question of ethics. Never really a question. And of course, I consider that a function of the death of religion, which the book I'm reading now, Makers of the Modern Mind, which isn't a conspiranoid book at all. It is, I didn't realize, it's been so long since I read it, that it's really from a Catholic perspective. But the point is, it has Darwin, and it talks about Darwin knew, his friends told him, if you come out with this ridiculous theory, in my opinion, with absolutely no evidence to support it, evidence against it, honestly, look up Paul Kammerer, read The Tale of the Midwife Toad, The Case of the Midwife Toad. So that they knew that the underpinnings of a moral society would be pulled away. And for me, I believe in objective morality. However, any consistent, coherent, not any, but there's more than one body of morality that will work as long as it's clear. A, you can see the consequences of the elements of it that don't work, and I think it's basically self-correcting. But B, people are on notice. And I think of a good example, I think, is like water rights in the Northeast are way different than in the Southwest in the US. Because the world is different. The morality of whose water it is different for good reasons. And it comes to philosophical questions. Are property rights more important than, human beings' access to water, as a human being? So that, the ethics are gone. And that's why I was saying, like, if your religion, if your spirituality, whatever, is untethered, it can easily be tethered to something false. So these scientists, their highest purpose is truth, which I believe is like a Blavatsky thing. Like, truth is the only truly worthy goal. And they're happy with themselves. And Ted Kaczynski talks about that. That's his actual central thesis, I think, is that scientists don't care at all about the ethics. So they will take a non-zero chance of destroying the universe because they have a greater chance of personal aggrandizement. And all they're weighing is their own death. And that's the kind of thing that is true. And that's why that crazy story was like broke my, I thought it was real when I first saw it, and I was just like, why would they do that? And as soon as I opened it, I saw it was The Onion. And I was like, oh, thank God it's The Onion, but probably not even.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It's probably
gorilla
true. It's probably real.
Yeah, and it gets actually a little bit creepy because we know Coco the gorilla, the famous
Yeah.
gorilla who they taught sign language, and Coco saw a kitten on the TV screen and he said, "I want a kitten." They're like, "Wow, look at this! Coco wants a cat," so they got him a cat and all this stuff, and he squished it at night and killed it by accident, and he's all upset. So very
Totally
sad.
out of the was it John Updike? Oh, come on. The men. Oh shit. Go ahead. Keep going.
That's okay because they sort of played on that real story, which was a very sad story. But so this fake story in The Onion, they said to help teach this.
Of Mice and Men, sorry.
Oh,
The
of
mouse
mice and
was
men.
squished.
Yeah. It's very similar to that.
Yeah.
So they say in this fake story that they give him a kitten and then kill it.
Oh shit, it was Steinbeck. Yes,
they
yes.
euthanize the kitten to help teach him that death is coming, and it's ridiculous.
Wait, they did that to Coco?
No, Coco
No,
accidentally.
they did it to the fake. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, the Onion was probably inspired by that, but I would bet big money and give you huge odds to say that when they gave the gorilla a kitten, they were pretty sure he was going to kill it.
Yeah, squish it.
I wouldn't let my son who has Down syndrome sleep with an animal. We have bunnies and stuff. I won't even allow their cage in his room. And he's very sweet with animals, but I don't know what he's gonna. He would do something like that. He could easily do something like that.
Accidents happen. Yeah.
Or not realize they were chewing an electrical wire. Like, just, you have to be. What the risks are.
Yeah. And for me, that story, that Onion story does highlight again a few of the themes that we looked at, is the ethical failure of the West. I don't know how else to describe it. The crisis of meaning is something I've been going on about lately.
But here's my hope. And I judge this based on the fact that the propaganda machine I think
It's breaking down a
El-
little.
Elul, I disagree with that.
Okay. Okay.
But Elul would call it obsessional propaganda. He says like they didn't need meat rationing in the US during World War II, but they imposed it so that we would be constantly aware of the war and feel like it was something we were struggling for. So the level of propaganda, so you think the propaganda machine's breaking down. I absolutely think they're just replacing it with something way more customized and effective. And they knew that, and that's why they're doing it. And they've learned their lesson about trying to change people. So they wait for the old generation to die. So my mom's dead, Fox News is dead. I believed in the real internet, whatever, and that's gone. But the the fact that they have to bombard us constantly with propaganda to the point where we cannot think on our own. And I was reading Carrie Mullis's Nobel Prize acceptance speech, and he said, when I was a kid, I blew things up in my spare time. And my son and I were like, yeah, when my son was a kid, he blew things up on the screen. So he doesn't really know how to blow things up. He doesn't really know what happens when you try not to blow things up and they blow up anyway. So they're not having real experiences. Everything all the time is propaganda, all the time, all the time. That's because I think ultimately it is hard to control everyone all the time. It's really, really hard. And you see, we have this innate religiosity, which they think they can hijack. And the biggest weakness, I think, for the elite is they don't really understand human nature. Maybe they're pathological themselves. They could be sociopaths. There
Yeah.
definitely is a easier path for the sociopath. And I think that's just something to be reprogrammed. And our only hope is that it isn't.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, I think. And after 1 year of podcasting, it's basically my anniversary. A couple of days ago was my
Oh,
very,
right
very, very
on.
first. So it's you're my last guest of the year too. So that's
Congratulations
nice to
on
have
a year of podcasting. I'm glad that
1 year.
you keep it
Yeah,
up
yeah,
because
I
it's
kept going.
so
Yeah,
really interesting and unique. And it's very hard to add value, I think, in the
yeah,
podcasting
yeah,
space because there's just thousands of people now.
yeah,
And you got to keep going when you have something of real value. So I
yeah,
encourage you.
yeah. That's why I dig deep and go try to get to the
Yeah.
core, right, of some things, not just like whatever the news is today and stuff. Although I do that too. You do a nice mix of you do everything. It's
I
great over
try
there.
to mix, but the most important thing, and I really would not do it if it weren't for this, is original stuff like you do. Just interviewing the same people over and over again, the same people that other people are interviewing. To me, somebody usually has one thing to say, and if I've heard it once, you'd
Yeah,
get an 80% of it. But with you, you're bringing original thoughts and you do it,
yeah,
bounce it off of other people, which is fine. But that's the most important thing. I discourage people from podcasting if they're just going to oh, I'm going to
yeah.
talk to this guy. And what you're really doing is just listening to him, which is fine, but he's got to spiel. I do that sometimes, but I think you have to have some original thinking
Yeah,
and yeah,
titillating information or
yeah.
titillating ideas.
And either synthesis or analysis.
And the local angle too, because Adam Curry has been saying on his No Agenda podcast lately that do a local
Oh,
podcast.
smart.
And so
Yes.
people might notice if they go through my material that 50% of all, I got about 50 interviews maybe in 1 year.
Yeah.
And half of them are from Nova Scotia, right here in my hometown. There's all kinds
That's
of shit going on here at home.
a great idea. And one thing I really want from Spotify or wherever your platform, I go on Megaphone, which is like a Spotify platform. I want them to offer, they offer commercials. I want them to offer local live weather and traffic
Hmm.
so that when I put my show up at 5 o'clock, people can listen to it instead of the radio. That's why people listen to the radio, because they need to know the traffic and the weather right then and there. And
Mhm.
if we could get that done, it's a great idea. And I should probably just implement it and try to make some money, but I'm no entrepreneur. I just want it. So someone please go invent that.
Okay, well, let's tell people where they can go find your voluminous and long library of wonderful
Yes.
information.
Thank you. So my website has been hacked a few times, so some of the links will be dead, but I still have probably 1,000 shows with all the show notes on monicaperezshow.com. I do have a glossary, which I need to update, but a lot of funny terms that have risen over the years. There's a link to monicamixes.com. But mainly, if you want to hear what I have to say on podcast, I'm on your favorite podcasting platform, Monica Perez Show. If you want to support me and you don't like the commercials, Substack's the best place to go at Monica Perez Show. And I do almost everything live and free on YouTube and Rumble at 2 o'clock most weekdays. Like Monday to Thursday, I try to be on at 2 o'clock so people can just pop in. The chat's really fun. And I'm also on Rockfin. So rockfin.com/Monica
And you
Perez.
stream to Twitter too, right? X.
I do at Monica Perez Show.
That's where I catch you usually.
Oh yeah, because
Yeah.
do you see it pop up? Will it say live with the little circle?
Yeah, you're not super shadow banned because I do
Yeah, okay,
see
that's
it
good. Yeah,
once in
that's
a
great.
while. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
But
good because I thought it was like not even visible for a while. Some people
no.
say it is, and some people say it isn't. But yeah, you can find it there, and I always post it there, the YouTube link for that day. And yeah, it's fun, and I love the community. It's really nice. That's why I don't mind being on YouTube. Half the time sometimes I take the shows off because I get strikes, and then you
Yeah.
can't stream.
Yeah.
So I just take them right off, but people can chat and they get to know each other. I've had people who have made friends with each other, started podcasts, share work on farms. It's really
Mhm.
nice. I really like that. That's local.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, there shall be a variety of links in the show notes to
Thank
where
you
to
so much.
contact you and follow your excellent gold standard news broadcasting material. And I wish you a wonderful day and thank you for coming on the podcast today.
You too, and Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas.
Thank you.